was given her first job. By evening, when the other girls had all gone out, Madame Pepe told Amara to get ready as one of their VIP clients was on his way. Amara did as she was told and sat ready on the bed. Minutes later, the man came in. He was a middle-aged man who looked stressed and seemed to have a lot on his mind. Madame Pepe's brothel was his favorite place to unwind whenever he was going through a rough patch. He didn't mind paying any amount as long as he got the supposed value for his money. He had been told a lot of good things about Amara by Madame Pepe, and so he had high expectations for this new girl. He came prepared too, having taken some body booster on his way there. As usual, Amara looked as innocent as anything, and when the man saw her, for a second, he doubted if this girl could really be a match. But then, as they say, experience is the best teacher. 2 hours later, the man laid flat on the bed, panting and totally exhausted. Even with the overdose booster he drank, Amara had worn him out. He rested for 30 minutes, and after he regained himself, he sat on the bed and looked at Amara, who was sitting at the edge of the bed looking calmly as though nothing had happened. "Young lady, what is your name?" Amara looked up and replied him, "I am Amara." The man nodded and then went on to sing her praises, and just before he left, he gave her a tip. Amara thanked him and immediately hid the money away. Gifts had schooled her that evening just before she left about the business. "See, Amara, you know it is only 20% you have from whatever any client pays, but some clients might give you a tip if they are very pleased with you. Now, on no account must you let Madame Pepe know about the tip. She must never find out, because once she knows, she will continue to collect all the tips from you, and the day you refuse to submit, there will be war. So don't start what you can't finish." As such, Amara decided to hide away the money carefully. The next morning, Madame Pepe called Amara. "Where is the money?" she demanded. But Amara looked lost. "Which money, ma?" Madame Pepe raised an eyebrow. "Did he not give you any tip last night?" Amara shook her head in denial. Madame Pepe studied her for a moment, and she seemed to believe Amara. Who wouldn't believe Amara? She looked as innocent as anything and acted naively. So, Madame Pepe was convinced that this one would not give her problems. She would use Amara for as long as she wanted, to her advantage. It didn't take long before news about Amara's ability spread, and everyone who came to the brothel wanted to have a taste of her. Even those who had never asked for VIP treatment before started to fight for a spot because of Amara, and Madame Pepe had to increase her price. Since the demand for Amara was now high, only the highest bidders get to meet her first, while the others would have to wait till it got to their turn. What drew these men in, and what gladdened Madame Pepe's heart, was that Amara never got tired or complained. She spoke only a little and was more about work, as if her life depended on it. Such was the fate of Amara under Madame Pepe, who made a lot of money from the poor girl within such a short time. Amara seemed to be content with this life and didn't think that there should be anything more else. After all, that was what she had been trained to do, and it was the only thing she knew how to do, until one day when she was confronted by a conversation she had not expected. It was a Sunday morning, and some of the girls were in the room casually discussing when Amara came in and asked to borrow a reel of thread from Gifts. As she collected it and wanted to leave, Gift called her back and asked her to join in their conversation. "Come and sit with us now, Amara. You are always alone and quiet. We were just discussing our plans outside of this our work. What would you wish to do if you have the opportunity to live this lifestyle?" Amara was taken unawares by the question. "Opportunity? I've not thought about that before," she said calmly, and the other girls looked at her shocked. Gift then asked her, "Wait, Amara, don't tell me that you plan on staying here forever. Don't you have any retirement plan? What do you plan on doing with the money you are saving?" But Amara still looked lost and totally clueless. Another lady then cut in. "Anyway, that is her own. She just came, so I guess the place is very conducive for her. As for me, I'm just waiting to get enough money to pay off my younger brother's school fees. Once he graduates, I will gather up the little I can and leave here to start a business for myself. Gift smiled and then added, as for me, I am just waiting to meet a man who can take care of me. Once I meet him, I will leave this work sharp and follow him. They all laughed, and then another girl said, seriously, I never wanted to do this. I came to this town by accident. My auntie promised to help train me in a fashion school. She brought me from the village, but couldn't fulfill her promise. She turned me into a free maid, and to make matters worse, her husband started to molest me every night. I had to run out of the house, and that was when I met Madame Pepe. I'm just trying to gather money to train myself in a fashion school. I want to be a very big fashion designer. One by one, the girls shared their plans and dreams for a better future outside of Madame Pepe's brothel, and Amara looked on bewildered. This was the first time she had ever been around such discussions, and it felt strange for her. When she went back to her room, she still couldn't shake off their words in her head. Does it mean that these girls are not happy being here? But what will I do? What can I even do? I don't have any plans. This is my life. But wait, Amara, is this really your life, or is it just the only thing you were taught to do? Nne did not teach me any other thing. And speaking of Nne, who knows what happened after I left? Maybe someone found her, but I am very sure she was dead before I left. Thank God I escaped quickly. But now that I am here, it's as if Nne's shadow still follows me. Anyway, as long as Madame Pepe does not maltreat me like Nne, then I'll be fine, Amara thought to herself. As such, Amara brushed off any thoughts of self-awareness and proudly accepted her reality until some things started to happen that made her have a rethink. One afternoon, Madame Pepe sent one of the girls to send for Amara so as to brief her about the VIP clients that would be coming as usual. But when the girl got to Amara's room, she found her shivering under the blankets. Amara, what is the problem? Are you okay? The girl asked, but Amara could barely say anything to her. The girl touched her forehead and shouted, "Oh no, your body is very hot, and Madame Pepe has sent for you. You know it is almost time for work. I am afraid this sickness came at the wrong time because Madame Pepe does not let anything interfere in her way of making money. Can you manage to get up, or should I tell her that you can't come?" The girl asked, full of concern, but Amara tried to shake her head, implying that she couldn't get up. The girl left to report to Madame Pepe, and almost immediately, Madame Pepe stormed into Amara's room. "Amara, where is that girl? What are you doing under the blankets? Don't you know it is almost time for work, and one of my biggest clients had booked you for today?" Madame Pepe said, and pulled the blankets away from Amara, who was still shivering on the bed. She struggled to say, "Madame, I don't feel well. My body is on fire." But Madame Pepe was not interested in any explanation. "Your body is on fire. Is it because of ordinary malaria that you want to confine yourself and spoil my business for me? My friend, get up and go take drugs. Make sure you freshen up and get ready for Chief this evening. I don't want any excuses," Madame Pepe said coldly and walked out of the room. Later, a girl brought some malaria tablets for Amara, who drank them and slept off. When she later woke up, it was quite late, and by then, the other girls had gone out for work. Her head still ached, and her body hurt, but she struggled to carry herself into the bathroom to have a shower and get ready for the evening's work. She did not want to have problems with Madame Pepe. Madame Pepe came in one last time to check if Amara was set, and she gave her a warning look as if to say, "Don't you dare mess up my business." Amara nodded nervously, and when the clients came, she used her inner strength to hold up and did her job just fine. But after the man left, Amara fell to the bed, exhausted and almost breathless. She woke up at midnight and started to shed tears. She couldn't help but to recall all her life had been since she was a child. She had always been in the care of people who didn't care a bit, not even for her life. They were all about what they could gain from her. They were all out to exploit her, and she knew the reason they even kept her at all was because she was useful in that aspect. Just imagine Madame Pepe. Since I came here, I have been nothing but good and helpful to her. I have served her well and even helped to double her VIP client base. Yet, she had never truly cared. What if I had died this night? What if something bad had happened to me? Would she have thrown me away and moved on to the next available replacement? For a very long time, Amara had not shed a tear, but now that she was becoming self-aware, she started to put all the little pieces together of all Madame Pepe had been doing to her. And it all pointed to one direction. She was seen as a property, as a tool that should be used until it lost its last value. No wonder the other girls are planning their escape. This place is not a final bus stop. But what will I do? Should I join them? I don't even know what to do. Where do I go from here? How am I sure I won't bump into a selfish and wicked host again? Or maybe I need to learn to stand on my own for once. But how? I don't even know how to do anything for myself. This is the only thing I know how to do. Maybe people like me are not meant to turn out to be anything good in life. Maybe this is supposed to be my life. With that, Amara continued to endure and work diligently for Madame Pepe, never bothering to think about any escape plan again until the final blow hits her face. That evening, she went to Madame Pepe's chamber to ask for some work kits as the one she had got finished. But just before she entered, she heard some voices and out of curiosity, she pressed her ears to the door to listen. Angel, I have told you to stop coming here. I don't want you to get corrupted by these girls. Whenever you need anything, just call me on the phone. If it is urgent, I'll be the one to come meet you. Madame Pepe's warning voice rang out, and then the person she was talking to seemed to shrug. I have heard, but just because I come here doesn't mean I'll get corrupted by those cheap girls now. Those ones are gone for life. You know, I wonder how you manage to get a huge number of them each time. How would a full human being with common sense agree to such slavery? The lady blurted out, and Madame Pepe laughed out loud. Didn't you just say human beings? These ones are even worse than animals. They have nothing without me. I own them. And don't forget that it is through them that I pay your expensive school fees in that school. Now it is enough. Come and be going. Amara quickly stepped back and pretended to just be arriving as the door opened. She took a quick glance at the girl, who should be slightly younger than her. She collected the work kit she had come for and left for her room. But she was really troubled. Who was that lady who had the effrontery to mock them? Angel, that's her name. I need to ask Gifts. She should know something, Amara thought to herself. And then went to ask Gifts, who confirmed that Angel was Madame Pepe's daughter. Amara nodded her head slowly as the realization sank in. So, this woman and her daughter think that we are less than animals. She even knows that what she is doing is slavery. Oh wow. So we have been fools since. Oh no, Amara, only you have been a fool. After all, the other girls all have an escape plan, but only you seem to be comfortable with being here. To think that she even has a daughter who is in an expensive school courtesy of our bodies. This is ridiculous. From then on, something seemed to awaken in Amara's mind, and she started to actively plan her own escape routes. Thankfully, she had saved up a reasonable amount of money, so she had something to start with. However, she knew the kind of person Madame Pepe was, so she was very careful and didn't even try to give the slightest clue that she had something up her sleeves. She continued to serve her madame like the humble sheep she was, while looking for a perfect time to move. Exactly 18 months of Amara working for Madame Pepe, she saw a perfect opportunity one Sunday afternoon. Madame Pepe had gone out to visit her daughter at her school. However, before she left, she gave a strict warning to the gateman to not allow anyone leave the premises until she arrived. Amara knew about the instruction, so she decided to not take anything with her. She only gathered her money and hid them away carefully in the most unlikely parts of her body. With an innocent smile on her face, she approached the gateman and told him that she wanted to get some medication down the road. The man looked at her thoughtfully, unsure of whether to break the rules for her. But then, he knew that Amara was the least person to have any hidden agenda. Since she came, she had been obedient and humble, so he allowed her. As soon as Amara stepped her feet out of the gates, she smiled bitterly. Something seemed to have been lifted up from her chest, and she knew that now was her chance to own her life. She would never allow anyone control her again. Never in her life. She covered her face with a black scarf to avoid anyone from recognizing her and took a bus to the park, where she boarded a night bus going to Lagos. She had heard that it was a very far city, but she had no idea how far it was. She just wanted to go very far from Madame Pepe. As she sat in the bus waiting for the time of departure, Amara closed her eyes to imagine what she was going into, but she couldn't see anything. Everything was dark, and her memory was blank, a proof that she had no plan in mind. She was just on the run and would figure out herself one day at a time. The next day, the bus arrived at Lagos, and as Amara stepped down, she seemed to look lost. Everything was happening so fast at the same time, and she seemed confused for a second. But then, she got a grip of herself and located a cheap hotel where she would stay before she rented a small room. 2 days later, she rented a small room and she moved in. Thankfully, she had saved up enough money, so she could easily buy a few things without feeling the burden. She had no idea what to do yet, and so every day she would just go out into the streets looking around for what she felt she would be able to do. But then she got confused the more with each passing day, until one day when she saw a group of young ladies sharing flyers. She was given one of the flyers, and when she got home, she brought it out to take a look at it. It was a 1 month extensive training on how to make shoes and sandals. The training price seemed fair enough, and so Amara decided to give it a trial. She would register and learn. She started the training, and much to her surprise, she found it easy. She poured in her heart and spirit into it, practicing in her free time, and in no time, she was already making unique designs. Amara was so happy that she could finally do something for once, and after the training, she used parts of the money she had saved up to start a small shop where she made shoes. Her designs were unique, and in no time, Amara started to attract customers, most of whom were men. Some of these men would come for the shoes, but then they would be attracted to Amara's beauty and gentle personality. But Amara's knowledge of men was limited to the fact that they were only devourers, and so whenever anyone indicated interest in her, she would waste no time in going under the sheets with him, not minding what he thought of her. The men soon realized that she was easy to get and was available to all, so the reasonable ones withdrew their interest, while some continued to take advantage of her. Amara did not mind at all. She had been into this all her life. She didn't know something was wrong with her until she had a life-changing encounter. One day, a young man came into her shop to get a pair of leather sandals, and after he paid for it, he sat to have a talk with her. From the way he started and looked at her, Amara took a wild guess and assumed he wanted the same thing as the rest, so she was upfront. "When do you want it? Give me your address." The man was confused. "What do you mean? Address for what?" Amara looked at him calmly. "What don't you understand? I am giving you what you want easily, so why are you pretending as if you are not after my body?" The man exclaimed, "Jesus, why would you say such a thing? That is a very degrading thing." Amara looked at him ridiculously. What does this one mean? And who is it trying to confuse? Anyway, when he's ready to talk, I will know. Let him keep deceiving himself, she thought to herself. The man introduced himself as Ayo, and he took his sandal and left. The next day, he came to Amara's shop again, and when she saw him, her face fell. How can I help you, sir? She asked coldly, but Ayo smiled and said he wanted to talk with her. See, Amara, I don't mean any harm. I don't know what must have happened for you to have that impression about me or about men in general, but I can assure you that I am different. I just want to be friends with you and get to know you better. Amara looked at him like a clown. Friend? What was that? Well, she doesn't know what friend meant, and in fact, she was not even interested. She did not say anything to him, however, and Ayo was confused. Amara, you're not saying anything. Anyway, I got this for you, Ayo said, and handed her a small bag of fruits. He did not even wait for her to refuse. He just kept it on the table and left. Amara looked at him suspiciously as he left, and then she looked at the gift he brought. What is this? I don't understand. I don't want trouble from anyone. This man should just get to business and say what he wants. Every day, Ayo would come to visit Amara, bearing one gift, and even if she refused to talk to him, he would leave the gift with her until one day when Amara asked him out of frustration, "What do you want? What exactly do you want from me?" Ayo smiled and then said, "I want you to follow me somewhere. I promise once you go with me, I won't bother you again if you want." Amara thought for a moment and then agreed to go with him. Ayo told her the time and place before he left, and on Sunday morning, Amara got up and prepared with no idea of what to expect there. Ayo had invited her to his church, and the environment felt strange to her because that was the first time she would be stepping her feet there. She sat at the back calmly and watched as the service went on, and then suddenly, as if pushed by a strange force, Amara broke down and started to weep. The pastor was ministering, and he had read Luke chapter 15, where Jesus told the parable of the shepherd who leaves the 99 sheep to go in search of the lost one. The message ignited something in Amara, as if she was the lost sheep Jesus was referring to. At that point, she knew that something was wrong with her. She knew she was lost, but she had no idea how lost she was. She followed through with the rest of the service, and when the altar call was made, she stood up and went to indicate her interest to give her life to Christ. Ayo sighted her from where he sat, and his heart leaped for joy. He knew that indeed a seed had been planted in her heart, and the one who planted it would surely make it bear abundant fruit. On her way home, Amara went to buy a Bible, as she saw everyone holding one in the church. Throughout that day, she struggled to read the words, understanding little to nothing from the words, but she was curious to know more. So, the next day, she went to the shop with the hope that Ayo would come, and when he came, she immediately asked him the questions that had been on her mind. Ayo was glad and slowly explained to her understanding. Amara was silent for a moment before she asked, "Do you mean that this your Jesus can revive a finished soul, even when the person does not deserve it?" Ayo smiled and nodded. "Yes, Amara. You don't need to deserve anything. Even before you knew about him, he has always been there with his outstretched arms. He doesn't care how bad the past has been. With him, all things are new." Amara sighed deeply. "This is serious, so when will that program take place again? I really want to go." Ayo then told her that they would be having midweek service and counseling for those who were interested, and Amara said that she would be there. And true to her words, she was there. She said she wanted to talk, and she was led to the counseling team. For the first time in her life, Amara felt bare and vulnerable. She opened up her heart, and only then did she realize the so much pain and grudge she had buried. She realized that she had built an unhealthy wall around her, and that the life she had believed was the best for her was only a lie. It was only a means for her to escape her reality. She also realized that even though her grandmother had led her into that life, she had the right and the power to retrace her path and make it what she wanted it to be. She shared her life story with the counselor, who was patient and listened to her, and afterwards she was taught how to pray and guided on some Bible verse to say, "You need to know that you are a masterpiece created for a purpose by God. Study these Bible verses daily and let them seep into your consciousness." Galatians 5 verse 1, 1 Peter 2 verse 9, 2 Corinthians 5 verse 17, and 2 Timothy 1 verse 7. Let these words and the Holy Spirit reform your mind and soul. Amara nodded and went home. She started to practice what she had been told, and she never missed any service in the church. Gradually, she found herself being released from the limiting beliefs and the uncontrollable sexual urge. Little by little, she started to believe that she was worthy of love and care, and that there was more to life than being an object for pleasure. Months later, Amara was in a better place, mentally, physically, and financially, as her shoe business was doing quite well. But in spite of this, she knew that there was something she needed closure from. Nne, her grandmother. Since that night at Nsukka, she had battled with the guilt of what she did, and she knew that she needed to return to close up the loose ends in her heart. She planned the trip back home, and when she arrived at the compound where she had grown, the air felt different. It felt filthy and choking. Amara looked around and she saw a grave by the corner of the compound. She knew immediately that it was her grandmother's grave. Apparently, some good neighbors had found her body and helped to bury her. Amara came with flowers and went to the graveside to say some prayers, asking for forgiveness upon herself and upon her grandmother. She placed the flowers beside the grave and, on a final note, waved her grandmother goodbye before leaving. As she sat in the bus going to Lagos, Amara knew that her life would only get better. She had grown so much from the once timid and vulnerable girl who believed that she was only good as an object. Now, she knew that she was God's beloved. She was worthy of genuine love. She knew that she had so much potential inside of her, and she wouldn't let anything hold her back henceforth. Thank you for watching this story. Please share with me what you learned from this story and let me know your thoughts about the story also. Give the story a thumbs up and subscribe to this channel. Thank you and remain blessed.